Congratulations, Graham Richardson,
morning, Pete.
AO. How does that sound?
It's got a nice ring to it, hasn't it? I think it's pretty cool. I'm actually very chuffed by this. I think it's terrific.
Yeah, so what ran through your mind? I mean, all your list of achievements, how does this one stack up?
Well, this isn't an achievement in that sense.
An acknowledgement of your achievements, though.
Yeah, it's an acknowledgement, and that's nice because you don't get acknowledged very much in this game. So I'm really over the moon about it. I think it's terrific.
Your friend Tony Abbott got an AC. Have you exchanged pleasantries since you've both received knowledge that you got the awards?
No, not yet. But I think it sounds like a pretty good idea for a celebratory lunch or dinner, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Where are you going to go?
Well, we usually go to Mr. Wong's in Sydney, so I dare say that's where the chaff bag will be taken.
You've lived a life in front of the cameras, Richo. You've done so much, and you're still going. What is it that drives you?
Well, I've got to support a family. I have a 12-year-old son. There's a bit of driving in that, but I'm not the sort of person who could, I think, sit in the rocking chair on the porch with a shawl around me and reading a book. I think that's not me. I have to be doing things. I need to have my mind occupied, and so I do this. And I love writing. I love the life I've got. I'm very fortunate, and I know about that fortune. I treasure it, and every morning I wake up, I've got a smile on my face. How
difficult has it been the last few months, Richo, given the pandemic that's taking place at the moment?
Well, I've had to be, even more careful than most people. So I've had a pretty solitary life for the last few months. I've stayed at home because it's I'm really a target for this disease, and I've successfully avoided it by staying home almost all of the time. But I'm ready to resume life if this thing's now lifted.
Okay, well let's resume your thoughts on some political issues at the moment. Can I get your thoughts on the protests that have taken place here on the weekend, the Black Lives Matter protests? Should they have taken place?
Oh, I don't think you can ever say people can't complain about something like Black Lives Matter. There have been too many deaths in custody. I don't think anyone disputes that. You can dispute the reasons for it, but not the fact. And I think it's a healthy debate to have to try and make sure that we can minimise some of those problems for the future. And I think with what's going on in America now, it's a reasonable opportunity to have a look here at home and say, well, things aren't perfect here either. What can we do to make them better?
You don't think Matthias Cormann was very, very strong, and Ken White on the show a short time ago said to an extent that he actually agreed with Matthias's comments that, the protesters were irresponsible because we are in a pandemic. Aside from the fact that people do have a right to protest, perhaps an exception should have been given in this particular time.
I think you've got to give some exceptions, and if you try and bottle up passions and grievances, inevitably you get trouble. You're far better off letting the steam come out, and that's all that's happened over the last few weeks. And it's not a big deal, and I wouldn't be getting too carried away with it. But of course, I think the government don't like it because it always looks like it's anti-them, and in the end, those protests usually turn out to be exactly that.
OK, just a couple of quick ones before you go. How do you think the current government's doing, and in particular the Prime Minister?
I think the government's performed reasonably well. Very hard to criticise Morrison. That's what makes him so hard to beat politically, and because he's such a reasonable man. The only way that he's going to be beaten is if there is an economic downturn. And we don't look like seeing one at the moment, so I think he's really hard to beat.
OK, some elections taking place this year. The Queensland election, first of all. Where do you see this going?
Well, I think at this stage I'd have my money on Palaszczuk to win a third term, which you wouldn't have thought a year or so ago. But I think she'll get there in part because of her own performance and also because the opposition leader, Deb Frecklington, hasn't made much of an impact. So I'd say that she's still a pretty big show, the old Anastasia. She's supposed to be the accidental premier, but it's an accident that just keeps repeating itself.
Oh, all right, and the US election taking place in November, where do you see that one going?
Well, I mean, sadly, I think Trump must start favourite. I mean, poor old Joe Biden is pretty hard to vote for. And I just can't imagine him turning out the vote. I don't think people will come to the polls for Joe Biden. He won't inspire enough of them. And so the Trump people will, I think, even though there's not as many of them as you might imagine, there'll be enough because the other bloke just can't get the vote out.